roller coaster. So let's get into today's show, and we got a lot of things to cover today. We got unemployment, we got Fed decisions. The biggest issue is the election, housing, inflation, stock market indexes, and we're going to cover a little bit in reverse mortgages too. So what I want to do today, and some of you already know that this is going to be released today, is we are actually going to be moving from our economic map of version 3 to version 4. There have been some changes that were unanticipated, and I'm going to show you how I believe that these are going to play out. Primarily, here's what has happened. The stimulus talks have stalled. My original anticipation is that both sides of the aisle, for the betterment and well-being of the United States citizen, the people, that they would have come to a compromise somewhere around September 8th when they got back from vacation. Here it is a month later. They're still arguing. They're still not coming to any conclusions. There's certain people on the Democratic side that are digging their heels in. They want the stimulus to bail out a lot of these broke cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York City. I disagree with that. That is, it's basically holding hostage the stimulus acts, but that's part of politics, right? So that has changed my economic mapping, and that's what I want to cover with you. Now, before I do that, I'm going to first outline for you what the version 3 showed. Now, if you remember, we started this back in February, and I adjusted it. This is the third time, was in August, actually, into version 3. And that had a lot to do with the protests, and those were unanticipated changes within our economy. And they caused not only a lot of damage, but they accelerated a second wave within the virus. They caused a lot of civil and social unrest, and that changed my economic modeling to version 3. Now today we're going to go on to version 4, but again, I got to show you exactly what we had under version 3. So it was broken up into 3 phases. And phase 3 was the final and the push phase, and that was due to happen in 2021 and thereafter. However, now that we're getting closer to the elections, and last week, President Trump came down with coronavirus, and by Monday he was, or was it Tuesday, he was back in the White House with no sign of any kind of symptoms, or so they say. And that was not really the issue. The issue for me, and why we're changing this, is the stimulus. So what originally I mapped out, and these really will not change, I mapped out what the tax proposal was under Biden versus Trump. It does not really make a difference as far as the real estate. Again, there's a forbearance. What could happen if Biden gets in and he forgives more of the rents, he forgives more of the mortgages, it could actually have a negative effect on the markets and real estate. Now, as you know, I've been trying to position you and everybody else into being poised to get into real estate. So that could be a huge change in the real estate side, but that's not what we're really here to talk about yet, because we don't know that yet. So what we're really here to talk about is that stimulus package. In my version 3, I had what I call the triangle volatility, and that triangle volatility was set in September, October, November due to the elections. Well, we saw that. We saw September go down in a big way. Now it looks like here in October on the 9th, we're almost back to where we were in August at our all-time highs. We're not too far off from those. And we also talked about the circle of volatility within the real estate. All right, now let's get into version 4, and let's talk about what it really entails. It has to do with the stimulus stall, the market result under a Biden win, and the market result under a Trump win. All right, so let's get back to where we were before, and I'm going to show you again. We're going to just put the real estate up here, and again, that's not really a part of today's discussion because there's not anything that I have that I would change my mapping at this point. I still show that circle of volatility happening at the same time with 8.4 million mortgages in forbearance. What I'm really going to change up now is this. Under the old plan, version 3, I showed a decrease in the stock market under a Biden win and then a slow increase. But now what I anticipate is if Biden wins and they push through a $2.4 trillion stimulus package, that is going to throw a lot more money into the economy, but it's not sustainable. Now, a lot of times people have asked me, Goldman Sachs just came out and said under a Biden win, they anticipate the stock market going up even more. So why do you think these large institutions say these things? My opinion is it's completely hedging the market. We saw Bill Ackman, back a hedge fund manager for, I think it's Allianz or whatever his hedge fund is, way back in March, came out and said, I think the market is going to go down by 50, 60%. And the market freaked out. It dropped. What a lot of people didn't know is this Bill Ackman had shorted the market. And I don't remember the exact numbers. I think it was something about, he had $27 million shorted the market, and he walked away with something like $3.5 billion or some ridiculous number. And again, it's because they play the market. And then all the copycatters came out after him, but everybody kind of caught up and they were watching the negative news. But it's been a little docile lately. And now Goldman Sachs comes out and says, under a Biden win, the stock market could soar. Mathematically, I don't see how they can say that, because they're talking about increasing corporate income tax rates, decreasing the American spendable amount. I mean, if you take away more money from every single American, and I know that they've been talking about the 1%, just tax the 1%. We all know that's not how it's going to go down. They're going to tax everybody. It's just the slippery slope that they use to get in to tax everybody. Now, some people will say, well, how do you know that? Because I've done tax returns now for 35 years. And every time the politicians get out and say, hey, we're just going to make this tax change to the rich, it doesn't work out like that. How do I know? I'm doing the physical tax returns. We see that money that actually comes out more from the middle class and even the lower incomes. So I'm fully anticipating that. So you increase corporate income taxes and you decrease the spendable amount of money that every American has. And guess what? You are going to have a decrease or a flattening of the stock market. Now, what does Goldman Sachs have to win if they say something like this? Well, think about it. If everybody goes into the stock market and they pump up these prices, who would win? Goldman Sachs. And then what happens if they do like Bill Ackman did at the end of the year? They pull the rug out from everybody, and when the market is at an all-time high, they sell out billions and billions of dollars. They walk away with a giant profit. Listen, Goldman and every other financial institution has done this over and over and over again. And when will the American public recognize to not listen to these kind of sources that have an interest in putting out that kind of media, right? So let's take a look at what actually happens, what I'm anticipating happens if Biden wins. We're going to see this giant push up in the stock market. But because two other forces are against us, the first is large institutions. They're going to want to take the money off the table and reduce the amount of risk. So they're going to start selling. Second sellers are going to be those people that have capital gains, because they're going to want to take that money off the table because, as you'll see, Biden's plan is to double your tax. If you have capital gains tax rates right now at 15%, his plan is to eliminate step-up in basis, reduce the amount of value that you have to pay until you have to pay estate taxes, increase the personal income tax rate up to 40%, 39.3 or whatever it is, increase the corporate income tax rate. So there's a lot of changes coming down the line. That cannot be good for the stock market. In the short term, why would it go up? Well, you pump in $2.4 trillion into our economy because Biden would definitely push for the higher stimulus act, and you're going to get this artificial high. It's like a sugar high. Well, like a sugar high, you got to come down sooner or later, right? And there's forces that will push that down. One is just basic monetary economics of not having people back at work. And when the stimulus runs out, just like we saw in August, when the stimulus ran out, then the market crashed, right? So I anticipate if Biden wins, we're going to have this giant push up, and then we're going to have a giant pull back, and then it'll level out. I don't think we're going to see any, if Biden wins, I don't think we're going to see any kind of stock market growth from that midline where we're at now, probably for another 2 years, because everybody's going to be so nervous about what that tax policy is going to look like. Now, under a Trump win, listen, Trump is not going to be perfect in any condition, because we still have to deal with how are we going to pay off this $7 trillion in stimulus. In addition, you're still talking about 5 or 6% inflation. So I do see, though, that by keeping the tax rates low, we're going to see a big pump up in the market, not nearly as much as a Biden win, because I don't think that under a Trump win, we're going to see 2.2 to 2.4 trillion in a stimulus. It'll probably be somewhere more around 1.7, 1.8, some compromise with where it's at right now. So again, what I'm fully anticipating is volatility, but under version 4, I'm anticipating a completely different outcome because, again, under version 3, I had a little bit more moderate in volatility within the stock market under a Biden win, but now that the stimulus is going to be hinged right at or close to where the election is, that changes the game, okay? Let's talk about one thing I've been getting a lot of questions on is reverse mortgages. Again, I do not sell them. We do not have a financial interest in them. What I'm encouraging you to do is to look at these. The interest rates are so low right now. These things are a wonderful mathematical vehicle to provide income and even hedge. We've been talking about this with clients where they can take a reverse mortgage and they can go buy a second house. There's no payback, so whatever they rent that second house for, there's actually positive income and you're not worried about the renter paying or not paying the mortgage. So again, I would definitely look into that. Round 4 Stimulus Act. We got the PPP, we got mortgage forbearance. Now, I know that many of you that have been watching the news and reading understand that what they're trying to do is pass a skinny act where it's just certain things, and Pelosi is not agreeing to it, even though that there is actually a majority right now of Democratic congressmen, women, that do just want to get this pushed through and then do another round of round 5, but they're not having it. So this is really what's on the table, what you see right now. And again, the short-term economic growth of the stock market is going to depend upon the Stimulus Act, and then it will smooth itself out with the vaccine and with people getting back to work. All right, economic numbers this week. We got 860,000 new unemployment claims. However, the actual unemployment rate went down about 15 basis points. Not a lot, but it shows that it is leveling out even as we are getting these second waves. What we're finding in the medical side is that certain drugs, Regeneron and antibiotics, and now they're even looking at this new study that shows that live flu shots actually have an effect on either getting or the severity of the COVID-19. We also have all these companies that are in this almost done phase of getting the vaccine released. So this week, we have one more company to add into phase 1. As I said last week, why are all these companies coming in at the end? They're letting the market pioneers figure it out, like Pfizer and Novavax and Gilead pharmacies. They're spending big bucks, but they're also got government money. But it's nice to come in after the game because you can come up with a similar type of vaccine, and a lot of that code of those vaccines is now becoming shareable. And Bill Gates has been a big part of that. There's been a lot of progress as far as sharing that, so you're going to see a lot more companies, and that's a good thing. Not good if you're that company that originally put your money and time into it, but it's a good thing. Right now, we still don't have any actual companies approved for full citizen use, only under emergency situations. Not much to change on the Fed economic rates. You saw Powell come out this week and said that we absolutely have to have more stimulus coming in, and the government, the Congress, couldn't do enough to pump up the economy. Well, that's telling you that we need to get a move on this thing and get that 4th round of stimulus put in. Just a small change, if you haven't joined, if this is the first time joining me, it's been a few weeks now, and the Feds used to use what's called the Phillips curve, and that curve was in existence since 1957. And just within about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, the Feds have decided that they're not going to use that curve anymore. And what that means is that I am fully anticipating that inflation will be somewhere in the 5 to 6% range for at least 4 years. Now, what this means for you is that if you have old annuities that have low caps, or you have things that are not producing at or above that inflationary rate, you got to get moving on changing those things to accommodate for those new rates. You must beat inflation. All right, where are we at with the markets? Well, before the close, shortly before the close here, we're up, 5.49% on the markets on the S&P 500, and this week the Dow actually went into a positive zone for the year compared to where we were in February. So it is coming back. Actions to take right now. Well, change the portfolio to shift based upon what's happened in the virus, we've seen these studies where the amount of people that are getting at-home food service has gone up 600% versus before the virus. We've seen now that streaming services have gone up in the 500 to 700% range because movie theaters are closed down. We got word that Regal is going to shut down all their theaters. The airlines were laying off 58,000 people. Disney was laying out 48,000 people. But Disney is still actually making money because they converted, they reinvented themselves. Real estate, again, I am not opposed to selling the real estate right now, taking some money off the table, and then coming back into that vertical next year sometime around May or June. Consider TIPS, Treasury inflation protected securities. But the problem is now you got to really look out because, I'm not the only person that sees the global economics and the US and inflation and has recommended to go to TIPS. So TIPS have been bought up in the last 90 days. We did 3 tranches of conversions of bonds to TIPS, and that started back in July. We ended in August. And that pushed a lot of our bonds, we got out of the bonds and pushed a lot of that percentage into TIPS. And a lot of other financial planners did the same thing. So that pushed the prices up for TIPS. So now you got to be very careful with the TIPS that you do buy, with the durations and the rates that you're going to get. Again, consider a reverse mortgage. I still am very, very confident in these things, especially with the interest rates. Real estate we talked about. If you took money out of an RMD or a profit sharing plan or a 401k and you used the $100,000 exemption that originally came out in the CARES Act, look at paying that back because the IRS came out with new guidelines that you may not be eligible to be able to take that $100,000. Volatility. Look, you have seen it. I don't know if I need to say any more about it. Prepare for it. Live with it. This is what we're in right now with volatility in the market. I don't believe that what we're seeing in the market today is going to have any bearing on where the market's going to be in 24 months from now. Make sure that you update your trust and make sure that your trust has the updated secured language. And again, consider doing a selling up basis strategy. A lot of people have called in and emailed and said, I don't understand what that is. Okay, let's say that you buy Johnson & Johnson stock at $50 and it goes to $100. When you have a capital gains tax rate that is as low as it is right now, what you want to do is sell it at $100, pay the capital gains tax rate at 15% on the $50 profit. Buy it back. Just sell it and buy it right back. And now you still have the same stock, right? But now your new basis is at $100. If they increase the tax rate going forward, the benefit is that you're not paying the taxes on the $50 at the higher rate, okay? Tax loss harvesting. You might have some small positions that you can do some swaps on before the end of the year to capitalize on those losses. And then definitely look at the RMD and the Roth calculations, okay? Election strategy. Again, Biden is planning on doubling the capital gains tax rate, getting rid of the step up in basis, lowering the exemption for estate taxes, increasing the corporate income tax rate. And both candidates have a healthcare and a Social Security agenda. It differs greatly with Biden wanting to enhance the ACA. So again, you got to prepare for this. If you're not a client of ours, if you're a client of ours, you've already been getting calls about our election pathway strategy. But if you're not a client of ours, give us a call. We'll walk you through what that strategy is. Lastly, before we wrap up for today, if you want to join our YouTube group, all you have to do is log on or just Google H&H Retirement YouTube channel. You're going to see a page comes up that you see in front of you right now. All you got to do is click the red button, subscribe. And lastly, before we wrap it up for today, if you have questions and you really need some help on your financial plan, give us a call. It's 844-702-1040. Again, it's 844-702-1040. Hey, have a great weekend, and we're getting closer to that election date where we're going to get a better bead on what people need to do before the end of the year. Ken Himmler signing off. Again, have a great weekend.